So, Mike, tell me about a time when you had to come up with an innovative or creative solution to solve a problem.
Sure. No, it's a great question. The experience that comes to mind is just as I had begun my role as employee relations specialist at the Toro Company. I had come into this kind of manufacturing environment and had been there long enough to kind of see some trends developing in the operations. And one of these things that really was kind of an operational issue but ended up impacting me in my role as employee relations specialist was this issue around inventory accuracy. So this was a facility, a manufacturing location that historically it had issues with inventory accuracy. And in a manufacturing location, this has some pretty significant implications. So as we kind of looked at the situation, we realized that in some cases there were production lines that were only 40% accurate in their inventory, meaning that 6 out of every 10 times that somebody went to grab a part that they needed to build a lawnmower, that part wasn't there. And so the ramification is that you go and you steal from other places and other lines, et cetera, to the point where you finally are shutting down lines and you're sending people home. And so in my role, this kind of bubbled up because I continued to have employees that were coming to me frustrated that they were being sent home without pay because lines were being shut down because of this inventory accuracy problem. And so while this really was not kind of an employee relations or an HR kind of an issue, it's very much an operations issue. I saw an opportunity to kind of look at this one and say, how from an HR perspective, could this be impacted? And frankly, as I talked to the different operations folks, it was the kind of issue where they knew it was going on. They had tried historically to fix it and had not been successful. And so they kind of thrown up their hands and said, it is what it is. And so it was kind of a fun little challenge for me to say, from my seat, how can I impact this, this business issue? And so I went to work working with the material handler group supervisors. So the material handlers are the group that really manage the inventory on the line and in the warehouse. And I really wanted to pick his brain and understand what was going on here. And so after doing that, I realized that we had what seemed to me kind of an obvious disconnect in how we did performance management for this group of people. What I found is that we had a group of people that had a very generic performance evaluation that didn't drive behavior to have accurate inventory. Instead, it drove very generic behaviors, and so they got very generic results. And so as I worked with the material handler supervisor, we identified a way to tweak the performance evaluation just for this subset of employees to drive behavior to increase the inventory accuracy. And so we did a couple of things. One, we tied them together as a team. So we identified specific areas and groups of people that would be responsible for a specific part of the warehouse. And this did something pretty significant. One, it held them accountable as a group. And so there was no stealing from other areas, et cetera, and it gave them ownership for their area. So suddenly there was a sense of pride and need to make sure that inventory in their area was accurate. And so that was the first thing we did. The second thing we did then is we tied their performance evaluation specifically to an inventory accuracy level. And so whereas we had levels in the 40% on some lines, the idea is that had to be somewhere closer to the 90 to 95 range. And so we implemented the performance evaluation that would be tied directly to this metric. And as we implemented that, there was some pushback. This was changed, this was different, and yet the result was pretty dramatic. Within a 6-month time frame, we found that the same lines that had been in the 40% accurate range 6 months previous were now in the upper 80s. And so it was very interesting to see kind of the folks on the operations side look and say, well, this is very interesting. Here's an HR person that was able to see an operational issue through a different lens and come with a solution that delivered business results. And so, had a great experience and a great exchange with those folks.